Welcome to the Alps, the greatest mountain range in Europe. Today, in our second podcast in the series, we are going to meet some of the animals that live in the Alps and learn more about the plant life which exists here. It is a region which has one of the richest flora and fauna in Europe, second only to the Mediterranean. I'm Johannes Pleschberger. As a Kärntner, someone who grew up in Carinthia in the picturesque southernmost part of Austria, my childhood was in many ways utopic. My parents, sister, brother and I lived in a small town called Spital an der Drau, surrounded by medieval castles, mountains and alpine lakes. And in our free time we immersed ourselves in the nature around us. One of my favorite childhood memories is when my siblings and I used to get home from school on a hot summer's day and plunge into a pond in the mountains near my home. What we loved was the fact that it was inhabited by lots of families of frogs. You could say they were our swimming buddies. As a child, I used to love going mushroom hunting. And today my mom, Regina and I are retracing our footsteps and climbing up Mount Stubeck in Carinthia in search of our beloved fungi. So, we just arrived on the Stubeck mountain. And now we step into the woods. It's very steep.
Yeah. And here, now you see the yellow carpets of mushrooms, of chanterelles. It's the most famous mushroom here in the area. Look.
Wow.
Normally it's important to cut it with a knife, but I have forgotten. Look, smell.
Smells like mushroom.
Yeah.
At 2,370 meters, the mountain is an impressive sight. It's a crisp autumnal day and the sunlight is gently filtering through the trees above us. It has to be said that mushroom hunting is something of a national pastime here in Austria. Such is our passion that we even have our very own mushroom museum in this region. In fact, foraging for mushrooms is a passion shared by all people who live in the foothills of the Alps. It's part of our mountain culture. Here is a view over the valley. It's raining, so perfect conditions for mushrooms. It's humid and wet. A little bit of fog. What is your favorite mushroom dish, Mother?
I like them with onions and olive oil, and then with tagliatelle.
So you understand the Italians who like the mushrooms too and come.
Yeah, but
in.
they prefer porcini.
Yeah. So your little wooden basket will soon be full.
Yeah, it's enough for our meal today.
We were really lucky today.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to climb hours to find some, but today
is our lucky chanterelle day.
Yeah.
So plenty of chanterelles, or Eierschwammeln as we call them here in Austria. Right, time for my mom and I to go home and cook these bright yellow, delicate, fruity beauties for dinner with some tagliatelle, a family favorite. Unfortunately, no sign of the elusive porcini today. One of the world's most prized edible mushrooms. The name porcini means piglets in Italian, and it's unknown whether they were given this name because of their distinctive plump shape or because of the speed at which they are greedily devoured by foodies. Here in Austria during the mushroom picking season in the autumn, you're only allowed to pick 2 kilograms of porcini mushrooms per day. And if you break the law, you are likely to receive a hefty fine of up to 3,360 euros. Sadly, that doesn't seem to be acting as much of a deterrent for porcini smugglers from neighboring Italy, who will go to any length to get hold of their beloved edible fungi. One person who knows all about this is Peter Czech from Mountain Watch, the environmental police here in Carinthia.
Yes, nice boy, very good. He's an American. He comes from the United States, from California.
We are standing in a rather unglamorous location, a car park near the A2 motorway in Klagenfurt. Peter, tell us more about your work.
We have to control all the area there. It's a big area, it's called Saualpe in German. And there the people do find many mushrooms and all kinds of mushroom. And that's the reason why people come from our neighbor states and try to earning a lot of mushrooms there. We go into the woods. And we have special places. There we have our control place and we are waiting that people come out of the wood. And when they come with their cars, we stop the cars, ask them if they earned mushrooms, and if they say no, we say to open the doors of the car so we can see in there if the persons to say the truth.
And here you have a dog?
Yes, it's my dog. It's my best friend. It's Doberman Montgomery. It's a young dog and he is still in training.
What do the dogs do? How do they help you?
The dogs do help us in critical situations if some people are aggressive, and also they are trained to smell a special kind of mushrooms, and when the people try them, that kind of mushrooms, they get a very special smell. And Montgomery is started to train to smell that kind of mushrooms.
And do you remember any stories what happened when somebody had really a lot of mushrooms, for example?
Yes. That's a situation we do have very often, because we have control stations on the Austrian highway, and there we make our control on the border to Italy. And when we are there with our special commando team, then we often had situations that people had more than 70 to 80 kilograms of mushrooms, and in this case it's the only way to take the mushrooms off. What we are looking for are those people, they come to Austria and spend the holidays in Carinthia. Then they stay there for 2 or 3 weeks. They are on camping places, and every day they go to the woods, earn their mushrooms, and when they come back, they have the equipment in their caravans and try the mushrooms there.
Thank you, Peter, and also Doberman Montgomery. From alpine fungi to possibly the region's most famous indigenous flower, the Edelweiss, which rose to fame in the 1965 film The Sound of Music, which starred Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer. Over the years, this delicate white plant with very star-shaped petals, which grows at high altitudes, has become a symbol of the Alps, but it hasn't been without its critics. The American writer Mark Twain described it as the ugly Swiss favorite and said that its blossom resembled the color of bad cigar ashes. Professor Christian Körner is an Austrian Swiss botanist and emeritus professor at the University of Basel.
The Edelweiss belongs to a group of species, the home of which actually is in Asia. You find many Edelweiss in the Himalayas, in Tibet, and even in Japan. Our Edelweiss in the Alps is the only one, and it seems like it missed the train back to Asia when the climate changed warm after the last glaciation, and all the many Edelweiss that populated the dry, cold meadows surrounding the northern part of the Alps withdrew, either died out or returned to Asia, with a few ones escaping into the mountains. So the Edelweiss in the Alps is actually a newcomer. This reminds us that the flora of any mountain, that could be the Cairngorms in Scotland or Kilimanjaro, is an assembly of species that have an origin in different parts of the world. In the case of the Alps, many species originate from the Arctic, some are from Africa, many are from the Mediterranean, and quite a lot is from Central Asia, with the Edelweiss the newest edition. Because the Edelweiss stands for clean and healthy mountain environments, it is not a surprise that it became used as a symbol of health and strength and cleanness. It is the charisma it carries, the symbolic power, perhaps, that may impress people.
And Christian Körner has another claim to fame. Although he lives in Switzerland now, he grew up in Salzburg and actually saw some of the Sound of Music being filmed when he was a child over 50 years ago.
It was really a coincidence that we dropped into this movie-making activity. I remember I must have been 10 or 11 and we biked through one of the alleys that lead out of town of Salzburg, and there's a beautiful old yellow palais and we couldn't pass. So we were stopped and we saw all this crowd of people, all the big lights, all the old-fashioned cars, all the Nazi symbols around. And then we learned they make a movie about a Salzburg family during the wartime. Many years later on, I saw the movie and I need to say it impressed me. It reflects both the period when it was made and it put Salzburg in a very beautiful picture. I think it was well done. It was a musical, but it contains also some substance, and I'm not surprised it became so popular.
And there's another species, both loved and loathed, that has been getting a lot of attention in the region recently. The wolf, known for its spine-tingling howls, and it has been getting bad press since the 17th century, when it was the baddie in the fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood. Driven almost to the point of extinction in the Alps at the beginning of the 20th century, the wolf population has been expanding naturally in the Alps since the 1990s. Today, these predatory creatures have reached all the alpine countries in Europe, and there have also been sightings in low-lying regions too. According to the latest WWF statistics, there are between 30 and 35 wolves living in the Austrian Alps region at the moment. Although wolves have legal protection in most countries in Europe, there have been a few cases of them being shot by livestock owners and hunters, like here in Austria, for example. In Austria, just as in Italy or France, in recent years more and more wolves have been killing sheep and other livestock, and are thus upsetting some farmers. One recent case hit the headlines in June and divided opinion in Austria. After a wolf killed 25 sheep, the district authorities in St. Johann im Bongau gave their permission for the creature to be shot. There are some who sympathize with this decision. 6 years ago, farmer Michael Stocker also shot a wolf that was on his property. I have traveled to the small town of Greifenburg to meet him.
Ja, wir haben einen Bergbauernhof auf 1200 Meter Seehöhe und
We have a farm 1200 meters up in the mountains, and it's a working farm. And one beautiful day we found a lot of sheep dead, and then it happened again. Within 3 days, 18 sheep are dead. Of course, we had no idea why, but we found out later because the wolf was inside the barn. The worst thing about the whole story is that the wolf just killed the sheep for fun. What was strange about the whole situation for us was that everyone was talking about the dead wolf, but nobody was talking about the 18 sheep that were killed. We live for our sheep, that is our purpose in life. For us, these sheep are just like a dog or a cat. They are our pets. We have a connection with them and have bred them for years. Of course it breaks your heart when you find one of your best sheep lying dead in front of you. And nobody asks you about how you feel. Everyone just talks about the dead wolf. We didn't know until then how the sheep had died. When I came to the building, I saw an animal and thought it was a fox. Then I called my father, who is a hunter, and he came with a rifle. The wolf was shot with a normal shotgun. That's normal for us. First we thought it was a wild sheepdog. Then it turned out afterwards to be a wolf. How did I know then that the wolf had killed them? This was confirmed because the sheep were dissected, and you would not believe how painful the deaths were. He bit them in the neck and in the chest, and you couldn't see anything from the outside. You had to peel off the fur, and then you could see the bite marks. Since that day, we are despised by many people. We have received threatening letters and phone calls. The police even had to offer us protection for 14 days, because we were afraid that they would set fire to something, just as they had threatened in the letters. And no, we didn't get any compensation for the dead sheep.
Some people in rural communities say wolves are threatening farmers' livelihoods. Klaus Witztum is from the Chamber of Agriculture.
Wolf und Almwirtschaft gemeinsam verträgt sich nicht.
Wolf and alpine pasture management are simply not compatible. If we want to continue farming in this alpine region the way we are now, we just have to think of our ancestors. 150 years ago, they tried to eradicate wolves from the Alps. And if we don't manage to do that now, our alpine pastures will be lost to the wolf forever. It's heartbreaking for a farmer when he sees a wolf tearing his animals apart, and especially when he can't do anything about it. If wolves are free to roam across our land as a protected species, farmers will have to give up farming. Because alpine pasture management is a passion. And if you take away a person's joy and passion, then they will simply stop doing the job, and then our alpine pastures will disappear.
But wolves have their supporters too. Bernhard Gottlieb is a conservationist. He's been campaigning for over 30 years to protect endangered species.
We have two ways of dealing with the wolf. So on one hand, we are full of wolves in the towns because the domestic dog is nothing else than a wolf. And we love them, and some people love them, I think, more than humans. And on the other hand, the wolf is thought like one of the biggest enemies of our time. And this is somehow very strange because the wolf is not a threat for alpine farming, especially it's not a threat for humans. And I think with the people, they were reading too much this fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood, which is very famous in German-speaking countries. And so from their childhood, they have a very strong feeling against the wolf. The funny thing is they love the bear, the brown bear, but he is potentially dangerous because the brown bear can really hurt you and he can kill you. The wolf, he will simply do nothing. Even if you injure a wolf, he will just go away and hide somewhere like an injured dog. But the bear, he gets angry. It's a very funny situation. And of course we want to protect the wolf. The wolf is also synonymous for nature.
I talked to some farmers and both said that the one side is the compensation, which they have to wait for. It's not easy. But the other thing is their heart when their sheep and their animals are being killed.
Now after 30 years, sometimes I realize that I'm getting more fundamental too, because the farmers, they say they feel bad when they kill the sheep. I think this is just a joke, because when they bring down the sheep from the alpine meadows, they kill the sheep themselves and they sell the meat. So it's not like a pet, you know. You could say, I'm so sorry because my dog or my, I don't know, my cat, my domestic cat is killed by somebody. But the sheep on the alpine meadows. In our area, they are only raised for meat, and they will be killed in winter.
Just over the mountains, Swiss voters recently went to the polls to decide whether to support the government's proposed changes to hunting legislation. And wolves, a protected species, were at the heart of the debate. In the end, 51.9% of people voted against the proposed amendments, which would have allowed Swiss cantons to cull wild animals like wolves without asking for federal permission. The results showed a clear divide between rural and urban areas, with the electorate in cities like Basel and Geneva wanting greater protection for wolves and other affected species. I spoke to some young Swiss voters in Zurich.
I mean, the world has to be balanced between human and animals. And if like human just like freely hunting the animals, then yeah, it's not good. At the end, it's not good for human as well. But then all the animal dies because it's just one hobby from the human.
In reality, predators like the wolf or big cats, if you let them roam free, they will control the population, for example, of deer, and thereby also protect other environmental aspects like forests, for example. And also the wolves that hunt, for example, sheep that belong to a shepherd, I think it's also not the biggest problem to tackle.
The debate over wolves continues. It seems there are no easy solutions. So you think you know Europe? Well, which alpine country is the 6th smallest country in the world? Any ideas? The tiny landlocked Principality of Liechtenstein, which is tucked between Switzerland and Austria. Covering an area of just over 60 square miles and with a population of almost 40,000, it is the only country in Europe with 100% of its territory in the Alps. Liechtenstein has been a hereditary monarchy since 1719 and is perhaps best known for being a tax haven, an image it is keen to shake off. It would like to reposition itself as a financial center. If the rumors are correct, Liechtenstein's only billionaire is worth half the country's GDP. One other interesting fact about the Principality: it is apparently the second least visited country in Europe. San Marino is in first position. This probably has more to do with its relative isolation and the fact that it doesn't have an airport than anything else. But my visit to Liechtenstein today has nothing to do with its size, monarchy or financial status. I have just arrived in the country's only ski resort, Malbun, which is in eastern Liechtenstein and about 2 kilometers from the Austrian border. I am here to meet two of the Principality's most famous inhabitants, Falkner Norman Vögeli and his golden eagle Azul, who locals have dubbed his wife because the two have been inseparable for 5 years. Before that, Norman accompanied her mother Tiger for over 27 years. So for the rest of the afternoon, I am going to be under the eagle's spell, on a hike through the mountains. Tourists travel for miles to see this magnificent bird of prey in its natural habitat and experience the deep bond between a man and a wild animal, so I feel incredibly privileged today.
Bei den Adlern kenne ich 3 Charakter. Es gibt Weiche bei ihnen.
Eagles have 3 distinctive personalities. There are the gentle ones, there are the strong-minded ones, and there are the crazy ones. And this one is definitely crazy and fast. Watch and you will see what I mean. How she moves through the air, how she soars quickly. Notice how powerful she is. When she lands and there is no wind, she jumps up, and that's just her character. It's the same with hunting. If you're hunting for strong, defensive prey, you need a bird like her, because she's very impulsive. You can also compare eagles with humans. If you're a gentle person, it does not mean that you are of no use. On the contrary, you are good at what you're good at. And if you're a bit crazy, you will also be good at certain things. And it is exactly the same with animals.
You have been married to Azul for 5 years. What has your relationship been like?
Die Chance, dass die ersten 5 Jahre bleibt, ist sehr klein, weil nicht bindungsverhalten.
In the first 5 years, there's a very small chance that the eagle will stray, and you actually fall in love with her. You think of her as your eagle, And as a human being, you become crazy. You think she's mine, but then she decides you're not the right match. And that's what makes the art of falconry so beautiful. You can't force it. The eagle is in charge and not the human being, and you cannot bribe it. She has completely different values, and the values she looks for are character and soul. That means if she's a freak, she doesn't want a freak by her side. She's looking for someone to complement her personality type. If she comes back after the courtship display, you will have her for life, as long as you don't make any mistakes. Because then she will say, "He compliments me, I've chosen him, there is no reason to leave him." And love doesn't always last forever. You have to behave properly for it to last. I also have a human wife, as well as 3 children, and Azul has never seen them. Azul won't accept my human wife. She realizes that she is a rival, and she does not tolerate her. If you do falconry with a golden eagle, you cannot share it with your family. It is not a hobby for the family on the weekend. It is a one-man show, or if a woman does it, a one-woman show. But I can promise you the show of all shows. You get pure honesty, purity, and that is beautiful.
From an endangered bird of prey to an insect which is blamed for destroying vast quantities of alpine woodland, the bark beetle, which is causing huge concern amongst forest owners. My colleague Natalie Carney has been to southern Germany to find out more.
Thanks, Johannes. Greetings from Kulmbach, which is just north of Nuremberg in Upper Bavaria. Now, this is a beautiful region filled with many forests, yet they are all being destroyed and affected by these bark beetles. They may only be 6 to 8 millimeters in size, but these insects have been causing huge problems and devastating forests not only here but across the country, causing economic hardships too. Climate change has meant that the temperatures have been rising and the bark beetles thrive in warmer conditions, so they've been feasting on these spruce trees and destroying thousands of hectares of forest land here. I'm in the middle of the Franconian forest, which is near the city of Kulmbach, to meet Dr. Michael Schmidt, who heads the Food, Agriculture and Forests office in the area. This forest sits upon a mid-altitude mountain range in northern Bavaria and is otherwise known as the crown of the state for its absolute natural beauty. Forests, of course, are normally a place of serenity and beauty where families can take a walk and enjoy nature. But as I look around me today, it's somewhat of a sad sight. You can certainly see the devastation caused by the bark beetle. Many of the spruce trees here have become sick with infestation over the summer and have been cut down.
This is the mama.
Oh, wow. So that's the mummy?
Yeah.
How can you tell?
These are the younger ones. They are brown.
Ah, they're light brown.
Mama is dark, and the young ones are brown. It's all over.
Dr. Schmidt, can you tell us more about what's going on here?
Schlimm wird's dann, wenn das Gefüge des Ökosystems.
Bark beetles cause problems when the structure, the ecosystem, gets a little out of hand and other factors come into it, such as climate change. It is then that these insects become much more aggressive than usual and destroy the trees. There are 2 different types of bark beetles. One is the Buchdrucker, or European spruce bark beetle, and the other is the Kupferstecher, which means engraver in English. These are the 2 important ones. Of course, there are hundreds of different species, but they don't cause such a big problem for the economy or for the ecosystem.
Here in Bavaria, all sorts of people own forests. It's actually quite common. They own it just either as an investment or because they want to protect the nature around them. So, for example, teachers, doctors, and even nurses. Here with me now I have Franz Josef Hempfling, who inherited his 19 hectares of forest land from his parents, and he is very concerned about what is going on here.
Also ich besitze 19 Hektar Wald.
I own 19 hectares of forest. That equates to about 48 football fields. And of that, about 42 football fields have been destroyed by bark beetles. I inherited the forest from my parents, and it's what I would call a typical farmer's forest. In the past, nearly all farmers owned forests, and they used the wood for heating. It was never about the money or making a profit. The forest was something you cared for and cherished. You took wood when you needed it and replenished it by planting new trees. But neither my parents or I can remember any disasters on this scale before. During the holidays, I spend most of my time in the forest and take care of it. And it's devastating to see huge areas of it dying. So there's obviously a financial side to it, but the emotional side of it is worse. It's brutal. You can't do anything about it. You're helpless. And all the work that's been put into it is worthless, futile, in vain.
So how are you and your parents coping, Franz?
Wenn ich mit meinen Eltern rede, die mittlerweile auch schon ziemlich alt sind.
When I talk to my parents who are pretty old, they just say that's how it is. That's just nature. But I don't agree. I believe in science, and we all know about climate change. We have known for about 30 years that the bark beetle issue has been getting worse with all the dry summers. That's the reality. I have a huge problem with seeing my forest dying, and I know it's actually not nature's fault. It's man-made. I have a huge problem with seeing my forest dying, and I know it's actually not nature's fault. It's a man-made problem. It's incredibly difficult for me when I have to go into the forest when it's, say, 35 degrees centigrade and have to have dead trees removed. And at the same time, you know that 80% of the German population is flying on holiday and destroying the planet. And that's really difficult to accept.
So knowing all this, will we be able to control the problem of the bark beetle in the future? Sandra Prent is the Food, Agriculture and Forest District Manager in Regensburg, also part of Bavaria.
In order to bring the bark beetle problem under control in the future, it will be a lot of work for the foresters, the forest owners and forest entrepreneurs. Many forest owners will also experience a lot of frustration when their old forests are lost. But yes, we can have hope in the future forests. We foresters and forest owners manage with nature, and nature will offer solutions. Nature will grow new trees in mixed forests.
Thanks, Natalie. To this day, I still consider the Carinthian Mountains to be my spiritual home. I love nothing more than the solitude of going hiking on my own in the mountain forests. For it is when you go off the beaten track away from the busy tourist areas, you might catch a glimpse of some of the region's native animals. A marmot, alpine ibex, a squirrel or a hare. And so I hope you have enjoyed meeting some of the species which make the Alps such a special place. I'm Johannes Pleschberger. Do join me next time for our final podcast in this series about the Alps, when I will be meeting some of the people who call the Alps their home. And don't forget our online special, The Alps, Timeless and Changing, at cgtn.com/Europe. Until next time, goodbye.